That's all it was, a respite for the men who would remain and continue to fight. Marine Corporal Bob Modica was luckier. He was coming home for Christmas. He docked in San Francisco on December 22nd. 2 days later, he was flying to New York City. And at about 11:30 on that Christmas Eve, he was walking down the block in his old Far Rockaway neighborhood in Queens.
I walked up the stoop, rang the bell, and as the door opened, my dog brushed right by my father, leaped this gigantic collie, almost knocked me down the stoop. I could have gotten killed at this most magic moment in my life, my concussion. And I grabbed my father. My mother was screaming, and I was home. I was home.
Home. I have a son. I try to imagine being in that house on that Christmas Eve. I imagine Bob Modica's mother. Then I imagine another mother in another house. It's in Chicago. Bob's friend, Serio Ricky, used to live there, but he went to Korea to fight communists, and they killed him. Here in America, in his hometown even, communists were alive and well. They ran for office. They had their own newspaper. They weren't Koreans. They were Americans, many of them. When I try to imagine how I would feel about that, if I were that mother in that house that Christmas Eve, I began to understand something about the fear that could make people in this country see red. Come back to A Cold Winter's Tale. Bring the family.
Come back to Our World in the winter of '52.
Welcome back to the winter of 1952. Time to talk about freedom. For example, these modern appliances were supposed to set women free. The electric frying pan, blender, bottle warmer, iron, not to mention the electric waffle iron. Now that's freedom. But free to do what? Most women didn't work outside the home, weren't encouraged to, and if they seemed to prefer security to freedom, well, there was a lot of that going around. For 2 years now, this man, Senator Joseph McCarthy, insisted that the security, if not the survival of America, was in grave and immediate peril. There were communists everywhere, he said. They were to blame for everything, he said. It was the politics of fear, and it was catching. He said communism had to be stopped at any price. And hadn't he already told us what wouldn't work?
I don't intend to try to fight communism and corruption State Department fashion with a silk handkerchief. Can't be done.
Red hunting was popular sport that season, not just the brutal, cynical Joe McCarthy, but Senator Pat McCarran's Internal Security Subcommittee, the House Un-American Activities Committee, and various state, local, and private organizations all were in full cry. The Supreme Court refused to review the case of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, convicted and condemned to death for passing atomic secrets to the Soviet Union. Government films, even newsreels, reinforced our fears.
We are engaged against the communists in a struggle for the minds of men.
Not even the Boy Scouts were immune.
We have knowledge of certain attempts by communists to secure positions of leadership, either in a scout unit, a council, or in the professional ranks.
You are?
In My Son John, a feature film starring Helen Hayes and Robert Walker, a family with 2 sons fighting in Korea learns that their 3rd son has become a communist.
Where's John? Isn't he coming today?
Oh, well,
He was detained.
I swear that I am not now or ever have been a member of the Communist Party. Feel better?
It was not prudent that winter to march or demonstrate on behalf of socialism or labor unions or equal rights for blacks. Any deviation toward the left was suspect. Communists were believed only when they repented and recanted. My Son John, murdered by his communist friends, records a message for the graduating class of his former college.
I am a traitor. I am a Native American communist spy. And may God have mercy on my soul.
The parents of 19-year-old Peter Albertson were members of the Communist Party.
The kids would stand across the street and yell, "Commie, go home," or to kill the communists. It only affected the family in, the personal relationships in ways that were unexpected. It drew us much closer.
Albertson's father, William, was indicted on charges of conspiring to advocate the violent overthrow of the government. George Crockett was a young lawyer who defended naturalized citizens who had been accused of lying about past communist sympathies.
Each of the people that I defended had been actively associated with the trade union movement. I defended Stanley Novak, who was an organizer for the International United Automobile Workers. Those who wanted to do a job on them claimed that they were members of the Communist Party.
A lawyer defended accused communists at his peril.
I went to prison for 4 months. In a period of hysteria such as we are talking about now, many of your very close friends no longer want to be seen with you.
If your friends didn't want to see you, chances are it was because your government did. Here in the federal courthouse in New York and throughout the country, the search was on for subversives in government. And meanwhile, civil defense told us to prepare for attack. After all, now the Soviets had the bomb.
It's a bomb. Duck and cover.
A vast segment of the population was firmly persuaded of the immediacy of the communist threat.
What American, without special training, can understand an enemy that would attempt to infiltrate our Boy Scouts?
Ambrose Salmini, once an ordinary citizen, now a man with a mission.
There was a great deal of frustration. People didn't know what to do about communism. What could they do?
What Salmini did was to go public. He would spread the alarm, tell people the truth about communism as he saw it, and the truth would be his weapon.
You never beat a team or an opponent by hate alone.
But hate alone is a poor weapon. Millions of persons in China and Europe also hated communism, but today they are slaves.
I did get 3 experts on various phases of communism. Each made a half-hour recording. And I was most fortunate in getting Bishop Fulton Sheen, who spoke on communism and religion.
There are no moral boundaries beyond which a communist believes he ever trespasses.
I had to sit down at night with my good wife and my children as best they could. It was something I enjoyed, and it's something I had to do. I just felt I had to do this. I packaged these in albums and made them available to individuals, to schools.
But some schools were way ahead of Salmini. For example, in New York City,
the superintendent of schools, through his deputy, informed 6 teachers that they have vacated their positions because they refused to testify about Communist Party membership before a subcommittee of the Congress. We have unanimously concluded that the action was justified.
The atmosphere of hysteria, the atmosphere of intimidation was rife.
Dr. James Moss taught at Dillard University and was involved with a committee that worked for civil rights in New Orleans.
Near the end of that semester, the president of the university called me in and indicated to me that he had heard that I was taking leadership in this committee, and that they were a bunch of communists, and I was being duped by them. And he made it very clear to me that if I chose to continue to associate with these communists, then I could count on not teaching at Dillard the next year.
So he went to Queens College in New York, but by Christmas 1952, Moss was finding out it might be a different school, but it was the same story.
The government had planted within your classes people who were posing as students to monitor what comments you were making, in class, since I was...
In the name of freedom, and in every field, the government seemed determined to expose and, if necessary, destroy those Americans who believed political freedom meant freedom to be a communist.